Cy-Hawk indeed. Mark Rogers TV here to give you instant analysis of Iowa's thrilling win over Iowa State, 44-41 in overtime. Much was given via the highlights late in the game, looking at Iowa State's last win in Ames against the Hawkeyes, and it was the same score in 2011, 6 years ago, 44-41. This one turns toward the Hawkeyes in a methodical first half that turned into a barn burner and definitely the best game of the noon hour. So I had my eye, as I typically do, on all sorts of games across the country, and then I really focused in on the Hawkeyes and the Cyclones. So let's first skip to overtime, then I'll take you through my entire notes for the instant analysis. Once again, audio versions of all my discussions with the best bloggers and broadcasters in college football, Stitcher, iTunes, and Podbean. Just search Mark Rogers TV, and also, of course, to subscribe to my YouTube channel. So Hakeem Butler had a tremendous game. He's a great target as a tight end for Iowa State. 5 receptions, 128 yards, and some big key situations in which he grabbed the football and outfought Iowa defenders for the football, but he made a key mistake in overtime in the first possession when he dropped a 3rd and 8. He was wide open. The ball delivered right on time and right to him at a perfect place in which he had blocked out the defense and was able to move in either direction to gain the first down for Iowa State, but he dropped the football, and it meant a field goal for Iowa State, and that proved to be decisive because Nathan Stanley, who really grew up in this game, 333 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, and no interceptions for the true freshman, Nathan Stanley. Number 22 pocket passer coming out of high school, according to 247 Sports, and the number 4 rated prospect overall out of Wisconsin, definitely has taken charge of this team, putting up 44 points against Iowa State and making the right decisions in overtime to really lead that short touchdown drive, of course, from the 25-yard line, and the game winner to Amir Smith-Marset, who was recruited as a defensive back and has switched sides of the football for Iowa and done a tremendous job. 44-41. So let me take it from the top of my notes as I dialed in on this one. And Akrum Wadley, one of the best running backs in the country. Just go back to his performance in the Outback Bowl in a 30-3 loss. Yes, his performance in a 27-point loss against NFL defenders all over the place for the Gators and given little room to run. Akrum Wadley ripped him up for over 100 yards and caught several key passes in open space and made guys miss. Akrum Wadley is fun to watch. What's key in 2017 is that Iowa went out and got one James Butler from Nevada. All he did was rush for 1,300 yards last season for Nevada. So this doesn't cause dissension amongst the Iowa team, as was discussed during the broadcast, but actually Akrum Wadley welcomes the help in the backfield, knows that it's better for the team. Butler more of a straight ahead, hit the seam runner. Wadley's got a lot more shake to his game, and they should prove to be a tremendous duo for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Now, on this day, Wadley had 118 yards on 28 carries. Butler filled in with 37 yards on 10 attempts, but we would expect Butler to be a little bit more successful upcoming. This is an Iowa State team that's coming off a big win in its opener and looking to have a much better season than they've had in recent years. Jacob Park, huge in that regard. It did not look sharp early in the game, under 50% throwing, and you had to see the pass-to-pass performance as he was high and wide and all over the place early in the game. As again, it was back and forth, defensive struggle early. Iowa gained a 21-10 lead in the third quarter and looked, based on the way the game was being played, that 11-point margin would be good enough. You also had Stanley with a great throw to Matt Vandenberg, who's coming back at wide receiver for Iowa, their top target last year. That made it 14-10. Vandenberg straight down the sideline from about the 25-yard line. Stanley threw a rope over the defensive back and perfectly into the outstretched arms of Matt Vandenberg for the touchdown to make it 14-10. And then later on the 94-yard drive, in which Iowa did what they typically do. They gave it to Wadley and also hit a number of tight ends in this series that were wide open down the seam on a number of plays to make it 21-10. Ike Boettger guard for Iowa. Key injury in the third quarter. They were controlling the line of scrimmage, had dominated play in the second half to that point, out with an injury, and the Iowa State defense took advantage of that. David Montgomery, little regarded player out of Cincinnati, Ohio, 75th rated running back in the country, number 55 prospect in the Buckeye State, is a tremendous player. He broke off some runs that you have to check out in the open field. One in particular, I counted 5 Hawkeyes who missed tackles. He is not just a jitterbug, though. He's got the shake and bake, but he's also a tough kid that converted a number of third downs into first down conversions based on just sheer will and muscle against the Iowa defense. He's good enough and drew comparisons to Kareem Hunt, who we saw rip off a number of tremendous plays in his NFL debut for the Kansas City Chiefs against the Patriots on Thursday night, where Montgomery has basically taken hold of the running back job over Mike Warren, a player who's gained 1,900 plus yards the last 2 years rushing and 8 touchdowns. So David Montgomery, look out for him. Now we know about Allen Lazard. He's been one of the best wide receivers in the Big 12 over the past several seasons. Big play for him. He burned the junior Amani Hooker on a beautifully placed football in which he stutter stepped. He broke the slant off and hit the corner of the end zone to make it 21-17. Hakeem Butler, we talked about the key drop in overtime, but he had a touchdown on a 4th and 1 play in which he snuck out and released on what the Hawkeyes had to be preparing for a smash up the middle on 4th and less than a yard, but he broke free for 31-21 lead. This is Hakeem Butler with 2 NBA cousins, and he's built like an NBA power forward. Should have a big season for the Cyclones. Akram Wadley, again, 6 minutes left in the game. He just basically took over one drive, had a tremendous 46-yard catch and run for the touchdown, in which he made a number of guys miss. And much like I just described with Montgomery, showed that he's got some muscles as well, especially one-on-one against the DBs. And even with 2 or 3 guys on him, pushed across for the score to make it 31-28. Then what could have been the backbreaker for Iowa State, Jacob Park did not see the defensive lineman Parker Hesse release. Hesse wasn't gaining any leverage, wasn't breaking into the backfield on the pass rush, so he read the pass lane. He dropped back. He intercepted the ball. Tremendous play by Hesse in his second career interception. But Iowa State held on defense inside the 5-yard line to force the field goal to make it 31-all. Park came back and hit that guy, Hakeem Butler, from 74 yards away as he just completely lost the Iowa safety, number 30. Stanley came back. He had an opportunity to win the game in the last minute, but he missed his tight end, Fant. And that was really the only miscues on Stanley's part. Wasn't poor decisions or really bad throws, but he had 3 particular opportunities to hit guys in stride down the field that had at least a step or 2. And in one case down the left sideline, the tight end, Fant, was completely wide open and Stanley missed him. So if he makes those throws, he's going for 450 and 7 or 8 touchdowns. Just a tremendous day by Nathan Stanley, but not a perfect day. He missed some guys wide open down the field. We mentioned the Wadley run to make it 38-all. They go to overtime, and then we outlined what happened in overtime. So for Iowa, they breathe a huge sigh of relief as a field goal favorite, but I think they're decidedly a better team than Iowa State. You got to credit the Cyclones on offense. Facing an Iowa team that last week against Josh Allen, who's considered a first-round NFL draft prospect at quarterback, held him to 174 yards passing, picked him off twice, and held Wyoming to 3 points. And then they come back, Iowa State does, and rip apart the Hawkeyes for most of the second half in almost pulling off a slight upset. Iowa's got North Texas at home next week. Then they've got Penn State coming in in what should be an interesting game. Of course, they pulled off the win at home against Michigan last season. For Iowa State, it's a trip to Akron, the Big 12 going to Akron. Interesting. And then they've got Big 12 play starting with a difficult schedule out of the gate in the Big 12 with Texas and Oklahoma. My take on Iowa State, of course, join me here on Mark Rogers TV on YouTube, and also, as we mentioned, the audio podcast as well. We enjoyed reading your comments. Please send them our way, and we'll talk up some college football right here on Mark Rogers TV.